And let me say an official good morning to both Mandy Easter of the State Library of Iowa and Carissa Vogel of the University of Iowa Law Library. We are here this morning to talk about a new exciting initiative, a partnership between our two agencies called the People's Law Library of Iowa. And so Mandy and Carissa, I will turn it over to you guys to do any more introductions and get us started hearing about this exciting new resource.
Thank you. Hello, and welcome to our introduction to the new People's Law Library of Iowa website, which launched on October 1st. I'm Mandy Easter, law librarian and library consultant for the State Library of Iowa in Des Moines. Joining me today is Carissa Vogel, a professor of instruction at the College of Law and the director of the University of Iowa's Law Library in Iowa City. Carissa holds a bachelor's degree from the University of California, Berkeley, a master's degree in library and information science from the University of Washington, and a jurisprudence doctorate from the University of New Hampshire. She has been the head of public services and lecturer in law at Columbia University's Law Library, assistant director for research and instruction, and lecturer in law at Cornell University's Law Library, and associate dean for library services, director of the Law Library, and professor of legal research at the Cardozo School of Law, all in New York. So many of us in Iowa are thrilled that just 2 years ago, not only did Carissa give up her jet-set East and West Coast life for the Midwest, but she broke her string of working only at institutions that begin with C to join the faculty at the University of Iowa. Perhaps it has something to do with the fact that her family lives in Wisconsin. Anyway, we are so lucky and proud that she's now an Iowan. Carissa and her team were instrumental in the massive effort to bring this website to life. I'm going to tell you briefly how the website came about, and then Carissa will put on her professor hat and help us understand the general structure of law in Iowa. After that, she'll show us how to use the People's Law Library website and demonstrate its features, along with pointing out how the site interacts with other authoritative sources of legal information. There will be time for questions and answers at the end. 5 years ago, I became a permanent liaison from the State Law Library to the Iowa Supreme Court's Access to Justice Commission. Every year, the State Law Library answers thousands of questions from ordinary citizens needing legal information. Clients are referred to us from the clerks of courts offices, legislators, state agencies, city and county governments, public libraries, the Attorney General's office, and even lawyers, among others. People want to know if they have a legal problem, and if so, how they can begin to deal with it. At the Law Library, we believe that any access to justice initiative has to involve connecting people with attorneys and real legal advice, not just encyclopedic information, sterile court forms, vague case law, and the code. We at the State Library had dreamed for years of creating a People's Law Library of Iowa website modeled after the award-winning People's Law Library of Maryland. We knew that providing access to justice would depend more and more on technology. We wanted to build a plain language legal information website geared toward Iowans' needs for clear explanations of legal subjects, resources about the law, and real information about how our courts operate. The site would challenge a legacy of legal complexity and move toward the goal of individuals having genuine access to legal information and the courts. It would be an integrated approach to legal services for everyone, but especially for low and moderate income Iowans, helping people understand their legal problems, their options, and possible remedies. For people with no alternative, the site would deliver a level of information and guidance far better than what was currently available. We imagined it would be compatible with mobile devices and equipped with a screen reader for visually impaired users. It would have an embedded glossary to quickly and effortlessly define legal terms. It could be translated into more than 100 languages. It would have a quick exit button for users in dangerous circumstances looking at pages containing sensitive information. It would tell people who need lawyers but are convinced attorneys are out of reach how to get good ones. The desire was certainly there, but year after year we struggled to find funding and to figure out exactly how to implement the nitty-gritty details of building such a website. Then 2 significant things happened. First, the pandemic, and along with it, the American Rescue Plan Act, which provided grant money to the State Library for technology projects. And then out of the blue, an email from Carissa introducing herself and asking if there might be any joint projects on which our 2 agencies could maybe collaborate. And so began months of planning and hard work that led to the birth of the People's Law Library. The State Library contracted with the University of Iowa's Law Library to build the website with technical support from Iowa State University. The University of Iowa's law librarians, who have both library science and law degrees, designed the website, compiled and coordinated existing content from legal information providers around the state, and also composed original content. 3 initial subject areas, the ones about which the public asks the most questions, were fleshed out: family law, landlord-tenant law, and consumer law. In more good news, the website made it into the State Library's 2023 through 2027 5-year strategic plan for our Library Services and Technology Act funding, and was accepted in August by the Federal Institute of Museum and Library Services. This means that the website is now an official project of the State Library, with goals, objectives, and activities attached to it, as well as oversight from the federal government. So funding to maintain, enhance, expand, and promote it is ensured for at least the next 5 years. During this time, 3 or more subject areas will be added to the website each year. For example, one of next year's topics is employment law. And now we'll hear from Carissa.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Mandy. I'm so excited to be joining you and talking about this exciting project. As part of it, when we were talking about this continuing education part, just as we did with thinking through the People's Law Library website, I want to assume no basic information about the law. So I think it's important to start off of just saying, this is kind of the general structure. Here are some of the sources. Here's how to find some of those sources of law, and then look at the People's Law Library website. Then talk about other resources that exist in the state with links to them and how they interact with that website. And then take questions and maybe do a little bit more of a live tour. How we're envisioning this is we're going to send this PowerPoint. Samantha's going to send this PowerPoint and post it after this session so that you can use this as a resource going forward. I think that there's a lot of power in not having to search Google, because as we know, sometimes when we search Google, we might find some answers, but we might not find the authoritative answers or the ones that we want to pass on to our patrons. So I think that this should consider this a good resource with links and active information. And I hope that you all save it on your desktops or wherever you might need to use it. To be able to help answer your own questions as well as the questions of patrons. So hopefully that all makes sense. If there are other questions you have as I go along, please make note of them. I wanted to make sure that there was plenty of time for question and answers, though if there aren't a lot of questions, trust me, I can speak for this full hour about these resources. So have no fear. My goal is that you will learn some good things. So first, the general structure of law in Iowa. So as many of you know, we voted on a constitutional amendment. So we do have a very important constitution that lays out a lot of the structure of our legal information in Iowa. The Constitution is one of the first sources that we go to as far as where the law is generated, what is constitutional versus not. Now, as constitutional law scholars will tell you, always go back to the Constitution. In reality, a lot of things don't require us to go back to the Constitution. They are handled by statute, by regulation, or by the common law found in court opinions. So when we talk in this chart that was put together by some of the fabulous academic law librarians at Drake University's law library, we divide in the law jurisdictionally things by mandatory authority and persuasive authority. Mandatory authority is things that we must follow if we are in a certain jurisdiction. Persuasive authority is more things that, this can give some credence to an argument, but we are not required to follow it. This also further divides information between primary sources of law and secondary sources of law. Primary sources of law are things that are enacted by lawmakers or government agencies that are authoritative sources of lawmaking. Secondary resources are everything else. As you can imagine, there are many more secondary resources than there are primary sources. And when we think about starting to do research, we often start with secondary resources because those are commentaries about the law. They're finding aids about the law. They help us identify where we can go. Because if anyone has done legal research, lawyers aren't necessarily known for writing the clearest, most easily accessible ways to describe a topic. I remember when I was a law student in New Hampshire, having to find some information about the selling of alcoholic beverages in the state. And I learned a great term called dram shop. Never in my life at the age of 25 had I ever come up with the words dram shop. But lo and behold, that is where the information is organized in New Hampshire. So many times, if you try to start doing research with the primary authority, you will end up confused or in totally wrong areas of law, which is why we emphasize starting with secondary sources. When we think about the People's Law Library, that is by definition a secondary resource. There is not any lawmaker that is creating that kind of site. So hopefully this is a good kind of explanation about how law is kind of generally structured and where we need to find information. Now, there are going to be plenty of times where someone might just have a citation or say, I want to find this article of the Constitution. If you do have a known bit of information, like a citation, it's very easy to go to official resources and pull up the information from there. On this particular slide, I linked to those primary resources of law. So there's a link here to the Iowa Constitution on the legislative website, as well as the statutory code and the administrative code, the regulatory code. So just for basic information, statutes are created by legislative bodies, in our case, the House and Senate, in the meetings of General Assembly. Regulations are from administrative agencies, which generally fall under the executive. Regulations are usually more granular in nature. They can go as granular as like this amount of bug is allowed to be in chocolate when it's manufactured. That's a federal regulation under the FDA. And yes, if you want to look it up, there are a certain number of bug parts that are allowed to be in chocolate. So kind of fun stuff. And then we also have the sources of our common law in the form of Supreme Court cases. I have a link here to the Supreme Court's website, and that links to opinions that have been sent down since 2017. They do also have an archive. So that is kind of general primary law in Iowa. Then when we talk about general structure, we talk about some of the secondary sources. So as I said, these are commentaries on the law. These are ways that we help to understand or find the law. I think most people that are coming in, as far as I know from our patrons, because we are also a public law library, people often want to find, how do I even start this particular topic area? Or I don't know what is going on here. They start to tell a story, and then we have to kind of figure out where it is that we have to point them and where they need to go. The first thing that we usually send people to are research guides. These are finding aids that have authoritative links about the law. Drake has some outstanding ones. I also have information from the University of Iowa's Law Library research guides. as well as the Library of Congress, because I think sometimes it's good to remember that we can go to other sources that are not even just within our state to find information. Underneath there, if you search through those links or look at them, you will be able to find a lot of different sources of law. These are regularly kept up to date by academic law librarians at Drake at the University of Iowa. And the Library of Congress has a lot of people that are regularly kind of checking links and updating information. Sometimes their links are maybe a couple of years out of date, but they're still a useful resource to have. The other thing that I wanted to link to is you have a lot of resources through the state library. One of them that we wanted to point out were the online resources for Iowans. I have a link here to this website, and then this picture is what you will see when you get to that page. You can link through there. There's some information that's embedded that can go on library websites right now. So if you have any questions about that, you can reach out to the state library. But we wanted to make sure that you knew that you had a place that you could actually just copy this, put it on library websites to be able to get to the People's Law Library of Iowa. And then, of course, the main event for this webinar is the state library's resource in the People's Law Library of Iowa. Now, as I said at the beginning, I'm just going to talk about this kind of in a flat form so you know what it looks like, and I can do more of a live demo when we get to the question and answer period. But as Mandy laid out, the whole point of this was to have a resource that did not assume any knowledge of the law, also assumed a very basic reading level, here at a 12-year-old reading level. So trying to remove legalese where possible. And then, as Mandy also talked about, having some kind of glossary, because as you all know, there are terms of art that you can't really explain in just simple language, or you have to know the term of art to understand how you're going to get a remedy or find other sources. When that has been the case, we created a glossary that is under this legal terms defined heading. Also, within all of the other pages, there are links to those defined terms, so you don't have to guess to see if divorce, for example, is defined in the glossary. When you're in those pages, anything that has a definition is dotted out, kind of underlined, and then if you hold your cursor over it, there's a question mark that appears, and you can click on it, and the pop-up will be the definition. So it doesn't take you out to another site. You can stay in that particular page and read through the information, and you don't have to navigate your way back and forth. We thought that that was a really, really important detail to add to this website, because we know that there are lots of people who are not as familiar with navigating the web, and those are oftentimes the people that most need the information. So in all of these things, as I was kind of drawing and mapping this out, I was thinking about my parents who are not technologically savvy, and it's like, how would I explain this? How would they think about trying to get this information and learn from it? Okay, they get confused when they have to go out to other pages and find their way back. Are there ways that we can bring this all back together? Similarly, people can be confused when they might say, well, I have to find a form now, and they don't exactly know what a form is called, or there might be multiple forms on official sources like the AG's office or the judicial branch, and they're not quite sure which one to pick. So we also made sure when we were designing this that all of the places that there were going to be forms that needed to be filled out linked to the judicial branch's website for the exact form that was needed for that topic. Also, we know that sometimes people don't necessarily trust the information that is provided to them. So it was also very important for us to cite to the primary authorities of law. So you will see embedded in the pages links to regulations, the code, the Constitution, if that's applicable, or case law, which is a little bit less applicable in these particular cases because most of this information is going to come out from statutory regulatory authority or information from the judicial branch. So it was really important that we had to think carefully about how do we encapsulate all of this information in an easy to understandable way in a, I'm not going to say intuitive, but one that once you actually understand the structure of the information, which should be a pretty easy process, you can find your way through it. And we don't have to require anyone to go to another website or go back to Google and start searching again. Also, as Mandy talked about, we thought it was really important for this to be translatable. So you will see down in the lower left-hand corner that you can select a language and it translates through Google Translate the website into over 120 languages. The quick escape button that Mandy talked about in case it wasn't safe is over in the lower right-hand corner. And then we have the main part of the content in the middle of the page. So we both have things in the navigation bar on the top, as well as in these boxes that were like, what is the quickest bits of information that people are going to come to for this site? So first, again, thinking about my lovely parents, Dale and Jeannie Vogel, I wrote a script for a video that's about 3.5 minutes long. And what it does is it walks the user through every single part of this page. So I know that people that aren't necessarily technologically savvy or just uncomfortable with navigating websites, they're sometimes afraid to click on something. So how do we hit that barrier so that people aren't afraid to click on a link? Well, let's explain to them exactly what they would find through each of these different resources. So we go through and we talk about exactly what's found under each of these menus and exactly how to use the research topics in the Ask a Librarian. We also know that people might want to do a little bit of self-help. They might want to find some information on foundational concepts. We have our first 3 research topics linked in this box here. And then sometimes people just get frustrated and they're really not sure where to start. Sometimes people don't really understand if they have a family law issue or not. So we also thought it was important to link to how do people get help. The Ask a Librarian links to a form that people can fill out, and that form goes to the state library so that Mandy can answer the questions. There are also in here not only this video explainer, but in the How Do I section, we also have a longer explanation about the site with some examples. And then we also have information about how to start legal research. So if you need some primers or you want to send someone some primers on starting legal research in Iowa, you can go there, as well as a link to finding representation. Everything in the legal research topics, the research topics drop down are exactly the same, takes you to the same place. We thought that was also really important to simplify the navigation. The legal terms defined as the glossary. That was partially built out from a glossary that is available on the judicial branch's website, as well as a list of some things that they hadn't yet defined and other things that we thought it was important to define. There's a very bit of basic information on the About page. One of the reasons for you all to go there is there are links to the promotional materials, the bookmarks and other flyers about the People's Law Library website that you might want to print off or make available to some of your patrons. And then of course there's the search feature. So that's kind of the basic information about the People's Law Library website. I also just wanted to talk a little bit and highlight some of those partners that I had discussed earlier. So the main state office links that we go to, aside from, some links back to the state libraries pages, are the Iowa Judicial Branch's website, which a lot of people will go to find information about all of the courts within the state of Iowa, as well as forms that are needed to be filled out, oftentimes to bring to a clerk of court's office. We also have a link here to the judicial branch. That is where we look for primary sources, the official sources of law in Iowa when it comes to legislative material and regulations. Those are all linked there. And then the other thing is the Attorney General's office website as well. Now, we have one of our topic areas is under consumer law. As you can imagine, there's a lot of information on the Attorney General's website about consumer law. The Attorney General, while that is both our chief legal officer for the state, so represents our state in conflicts with other states, government inter-office problems, the Attorney General also helps the people of Iowa in their own kind of consumer and sometimes criminal complaints. So they have kind of multiple missions. So we use them in the part that is thinking about kind of consumer access. So there are a lot of links right now on this People's Law Library website that link to the Attorney General sites. So those are the state offices that are linked in the website. There are other organizations that don't rise to the level of state, but are very authoritative sources and important resources to know in Iowa. One is the Iowa State Bar Association. So that is the organization, or the professional organization of Iowa lawyers. One of the features and one of the services that the Iowa State Bar Association offers is a Find a Lawyer service. So I put a link here to that website. People can look for it by geographic area or by particular topic. Now, sometimes people don't necessarily know how to fill out the topic, like they're not sure what kind of lawyer that they're looking for, which is one of the reasons that we have the People's Law Library website, to provide some of that foundational knowledge where people can say, this is the problem I have. This is maybe the kind of lawyer that I need to search for in my county or area. Or I just need to find a lawyer on a particular topic and see if they're available. The other resource is Iowa Legal Aid. Iowa Legal Aid and legal aid organizations around the United States are wonderful resources, but they do have income caps. So if you are not a lower income person, you're not going to be able to find representation from legal aid. However, they do have a major public service mission, and part of that public service mission is to provide information about legal topics in the states that they in which they work. They also will cover some federal resources like immigration, for example, because of course someone can live in a particular state and have issues that fall under more federal jurisdictions than state jurisdictional issues. So that resource is huge. There's tons of information on the legal aid website. And they do a great job of trying to cover a lot of information. One of the things that we were looking at when we designed the People's Law Library website is we wanted to have the information under each topic being organized as someone would come across those issues. And we'll look at that when I do the little tour. So instead of having just alphabetical listings of information based on the first letter of the first word of the title of a website, we think conceptually how the information is organized and try to present it that way. Though we know a lot of people will be coming to this website from doing Google searches, there are some that once they get there, they want to see what other information is around, and that is kind of where that organizational structure can help. Now, for a lot of us that provide direct assistance to patrons, it is helpful for us to kind of see that organization. I encourage you to just kind of take a beat and look at that, so you have a sense in your head about how that is organized. So that is the kind of really quick overview of how the structure of Iowa law legal information works, that kind of mandatory authority versus persuasive authority, and then thinking about primary versus secondary sources, primary being the things that come from state actors, lawmakers that can enact laws, versus those things that are about the law, commentary on the law, helping you find the law themselves. And the People's Law Library of Iowa falls in that secondary resource and finding aids kind of category. So hopefully that was a good structure and overview with some helpful links that will assist you to make it easier for you to help patrons or users coming in and asking questions. So I want to open up the floor to see if there are any questions that we can address. And then once we get through that, I will bring up the kind of live demo version of the People's Law Library.
Great. Thank you guys so much. I did see some appreciative comments coming through in the chat. And so I want to make sure that you guys get that message from our audience today too, that people are very excited about this resource. The first question might come up kind of in the tour part, but someone is asking if the links for the primary authority sites are on the website as well, in addition to being here in this slide deck.
Yes, they are.
Okay. We had a question about the reading level, which I think you said is written at about a 12-year-old level. So 4th, 5th grade is that about right?
I think so. You're talking to someone who does not have kids themselves and whose godchildren are now in their 20s and 30s. So that sounds about right, unless someone wants to correct.
Well, I think that it was rated between, I think Emily said it's between 6th and 8th grade, depending on which page you're looking at, but no more than 8th grade. 8th grade is the highest that it gets.
Wonderful. One question also kind of practical, how often will the site be updated?
So we're in the process of getting things going because the state library has asked us to be part of this project for the next 5 years. So we're putting a new kind of team in place together and going over things. The idea is that we would be regularly updating, monitoring and updating resources. Now that's part of having alerts set up. So if you know that there are some changes in the law, that can be addressed. We have research assistants who work with us and are assigned different parts of the website to take a look at. So our thought is that every single page will be touched at least once a year, but many of them will be touched more frequently than that based on alerts or other information.
Okay. The next question, and I don't know if maybe Mandy can address this a little bit more on the public side, but we had 2 questions sort of related to sort of helping patrons with this resource. How do you recommend we interact with patrons who need help with this resource, especially if they're not tech literate? Can we print out what they need? Should we try and keep them on the computer? And then I think a sort of related question, if someone needs a lot of help with this topic, are we best off, referring them to the lawyer, links for lawyers page, that kind of thing.
Okay, so I've spent 20 years at the State Law Library trying to teach all the public librarians across the state to refer legal questions to us, so that, that's what we do 40 hours a week. So we don't have, it's not like most public librarians handle a legal question, maybe once a day. If, maybe in Des Moines, it's once a day, maybe, in the Northwest Iowa, in a small, tiny town, it's once a year, but it's not something you have to keep up on. So when somebody looks at the website and, your main job is to point out the website to people, when they come in and say, I think I have a consumer debt problem or something like that, you say, hey, guess what? We got this new resource. Why don't you look here? And you can show them the research topics and then let them start clicking through. If they come back at you with more questions, that's when you say, I suggest you contact the state law library. They have law librarians there who have far more knowledge about the resources than we do. So continue to do that. This isn't a substitute for that. We're not trying to tell you that now you're in charge of answering legal questions. This is just one more resource for your patrons. Maybe it can take care of some of the very simple questions. So anyway, they can click on the Ask a Law Librarian, box here and type out their question. We get it the next day if it's in the evening. Otherwise, we get it right away. So we respond within 24 hours. So I would say that the way to interact with patrons is to just make them aware of the website. You don't have to become experts at using it. It's very intuitive to use. It's easy. It's simple to navigate. So I don't expect everybody to, try to become experts in using it. That's what the state law library is here for. So I don't know if that answers your question, but if not, let me know and I can talk some more, but.
And can I just add to that? Like, sometimes the answer is that someone needs to reach out to the judicial branch or that they do have to find representation. And I think that what Mandy is indicating is you can give them a certain amount of help, then escalate it to the state law librarian. And then the state law librarian might say, this is actually a more complicated question. Here's a link to finding representation, or here's a link to legal aid. Here's the Iowa Bar Association. Here's this page on the state library website that tells you how to find representation. And it's, again, we're providing the how to get some of the information. We're not becoming experts in law, right? Our job as librarians is to connect people to help them satisfy their information needs. Now, I think one of the things too, and one of the reasons that I wanted to have some of these links on the website, the People's Law Library, is say that you don't have time to talk to a patron about how to navigate the website, because I've spent time on, I don't work at the reference desk anymore. But I definitely remember being at the University of Washington and helping public patrons there and having people want me to basically walk through an entire website with them. Now, that wasn't a good use of my time because it meant that there were other patrons who would see that I was busy and not get assistance. So my thought was, if you have someone coming in and they're asking questions about the website, you can say, hey, there are 2 videos you can watch. You can watch this 3.5-minute video. And then if you still have questions under the how do I, there is another explainer that's almost 7 minutes long that goes into even more detail of information. So that buys you as the primary kind of first contact with a little bit more time and not actually having to teach people how to navigate the website.
Okay, great. We did have one question early on about getting a logo and that sort of thing on a public library website. So if I'm out in a public library, you can, I could put it on my website to promote it. And I think we have a couple of the library resource technicians for the state library on the call, so they can jump in to correct me if I'm wrong, but I am sure that your district LRT would be more than happy to help you get a logo and link for this on your website. And then Carissa has also just navigated to another useful section here, which is the promotional materials. So you've got about.
If that was too fast, it was you go to the global navigation bar, the about link, And then underneath there at the very bottom, you have the promotional materials that you can print out and make available.
And I just had a side chat from the communications person at the State Library who mentions she could also add the logo in there. If you're a website DIYer and you want to put it on your own website, you will be able to grab that from that promotional materials section as well. Robin or Krista, sorry, I was reading one of the chats from Robin. Is there any, or can you give us a little more of a live action tour here
Yes,
of
I would
the
be
glossary and some of that?
happy to. So what I'm going to do is go live through this whole thing, since we do have a little bit more time. If there are questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. And Samantha, you can interrupt me at any time if we have a more direct question. So this is the homepage. Isn't it pretty? It's so pretty. I love looking at it. So the first thing is we'll just kind of go over this navigation bar, and then I'll kind of come through this middle section, and then I'll go along the bottom. Okay. So the first thing, homepage, obviously we're sitting here at the homepage. The next part is the how do I, and the way that we thought about it were the main things that people would want to know is, how do I even start researching information? How do I use this site? And whoa, I'm so overwhelmed. How do I find representation? So under the legal research issues, this is all information that we took from the courses that we teach to law students and to undergrad students or to graduate students that are working in interdisciplinary work. Maybe they're in the history field, but they're wanting to do some legal work as well for a project. So how do we, assuming no information, assuming no knowledge, how do we go about teaching people how to conduct legal research? Now, we didn't want to go into the weeds of it. We're not teaching people how to be lawyers or how to be law librarians. So we were just assuming kind of basic overview. And then we organized it so that someone could basically use this as a tutorial. How do you get started? How do you define, what is the law even? More in the discussion about secondary sources. So this is some of the basic stuff I covered when I was talking about the general structure of information. The first place we usually tell people to go to if they're looking for information after secondary sources are statutes. Oftentimes, if available, annotated statutes, because that talks as well about how the courts have interpreted statutes. Next, underneath their most frequent are regulations, statewide regulations, then local ordinances, then case law, court rules, and then evaluating information themselves. So if you even look underneath here at each of these places, we try to break it up and chunk the concepts so that people don't get overwhelmed, right? One of the most overwhelming things for most people is not understanding what they don't know, feeling the stress and anxiety of not knowing something, and then doing a search in the open web, getting all of this information, not knowing how to prioritize it, and then they're long explainers. So our thought was, how do we chunk it? How do we make it easy? How, if possible, if we're looking at a desktop, does it fit on kind of like one desktop page so someone can see the end, and that alleviates some of the anxiety? Now, obviously in a mobile device, it's going to be a little bit longer, but that was conceptually what we were thinking about. In all of these like internal pages, the substantive content pages, we have a link to how to ask a law librarian, right? You'll see everywhere on this page, like, how do I get help? How do I get help? How do I get help? So that is always going to appear in that left-hand column. As I said, we're kind of going through chunking the bits of information. How do I find this? Not how do I find everything in the world, but how do I find some basic information? So that's what you're going to find.
We did have one question about legal forms, and if I'm remembering what you said correctly, those are sort of embedded within those topics, right? So
Yes.
if I had a question about, I want to know that I have the exact right form to change my
Yep.
name.
I'll show you that in
Great.
1 second, and we'll
Cool.
actually navigate to something. So this is the researching legal issues. Back to the how do I use the People's Law Library website. So this is just under 7 minutes, a more complete video of using this. Now, further videos, we're going to create our like hypotheticals of like, oh, you have this particular problem. Here's how you would use this site to find information about it. Not that that's the end of the information, but here's the basic information. Here are some of the thoughts about kind of next steps. All of those videos as they are loaded, and the Iowa Bar Association is also providing some video content, is available through a YouTube channel. So this will keep kind of populating as we have more information to provide people. So that will both be created by Iowa lawyers that are doing pro bono work as part of the State Bar Association, as well as law librarians like me, instructors that are providing scripts and information. And I'm sure if Mandy ever wanted to do video, we would be happy to put it on there as well. The last resource on here is how to find representation. So how to find a lawyer. This is put together by the state library. And then how do I find the best lawyer? How do I pay for it? So there's a lot of detailed information here. You should feel free to just kind of send this link to people, not actually having to explain it, because the whole purpose of this was, how does it work to explain itself? And if you have more information, how do I then ask for help from a law librarian? So that's under the how do I tab. Now let's get into the research topics. So the question was, how do I actually find a form? So you can go directly to the judicial branch's website. They have a complete organization of forms. It can be hard to navigate if you don't know exactly what it is that you're looking for. And some of the forms have very similar names, so it's hard sometimes to distinguish. Now, knowing that, when we were creating these research topics, we wanted to embed those links. So I'm going to go to the family law research topic. And as I said, we tried to organize this not alphabetically, but kind of how some of these issues come up. So, and oftentimes like the common things that are going to be a problem. So under name and identity, we have information about how to get birth certificate, changing information on your birth certificate, and I'm just going to pick on this, changing an adult's name. Under this site, the source demonstrates a number of different things. One of them that I talked about was the kind of highlighting and underlining when there is a legally defined term. So here an example, you see divorce or file are underlined, and then that little question mark appears. If you click on it, you're not going to be taken off of the page. A pop-up window is going to show up that defines the term, right? So you could go to the legal terms defined, but you can actually find that information right when you stay on the page. The other question was, where do I find the actual form? So whenever there is a form that's associated with it, at the bottom of the page, we have a link to the form. Sometimes we also link it in the text of the page itself, but no matter what, you will find the form associated with it at the bottom, or sometimes there could be multiple forms depending. We've tried, when we had situations where there were multiple forms, we tried to figure out a way to break up a concept so that it could distinguish between the two, but sometimes that wasn't necessarily the easiest thing to pull apart. So we tried to explain what forms are needed. So if you need it, you said, okay, this is the right page. I want to change. I'm an adult. I want to change my name. I go down to the bottom. I will be taken to the form that is available through the judicial branch's website. It was really important to have us do that link so that we weren't telling you kind of generally where to go and what to search. And then we know that the judicial branch will keep updating the information on these forms. And since we also have a deep connection, I was appointed as a commissioner to the Iowa Access to Justice Commission as well. Since we have a lot of that dialogue, we're also working on, well, when you judicial branch are creating forms or changing forms, can you make sure that that information immediately comes to us as well as going out to your resources through the judicial branch? Also, as I said, this is supposed to be a more plain language, easy to understand explainer of the issue. But some people want to say, but what does the law really say? Instead of having to have someone search through the code to try to find the answer, we want to be really explicit. And here you go. Look right to the code. In all of these situations, we link to the official version of the code on the legislative website. So if someone says, well, is that really what it says? Go ahead and read for yourself. So hopefully that handles all of the issues we can think of. You have a hard time understanding, you want to actually see what the primary law is, you're not really sure what forms are or how to get help. We, in each of these pages, are hopefully addressing all of those issues. There's also a print-friendly feature on here, which was an important add because we know that people might be at a public library and maybe they don't have computer access at home, maybe their internet is slow, and they have particular resources they want to print out. It's easy to print out. Then we also have, of course, the translate feature and then the quick escape button. So in thinking about the research topics, again, as I was talking about organizing things by topic area, we try to chunk them out. Some of these are shorter and longer, but you can send people to here to browse. We understand that probably most of the people are going to be coming through a Google search and then finding their way through. I think one of the helpful things that you can say to your patrons, if they are finding something that's kind of relatively close to a topic, but maybe it's not right on, is to help them. Look at the broader part of this website to see if there's other information. You can do that if they're on the People's Law Library website. You can do that if they're at Legal Aid, and then you can say if you still have questions, you can use the Ask a Law Library feature. Legal terms defined is our glossary. So the majority of these seed terms were brought over directly from the judicial branch's website. We thought about linking some of the terms that were defined just to the judicial branch's website. I think eventually what we'll end up doing is the judicial branch won't be keeping their glossary updated and we'll be linking here so we don't have kind of competing sources and information. And one of the things that drives me straight up the wall is when multiple people are doing the same thing when we could actually just work together and use our time in better ways. So you can find legal terms defined here. Again, we thought it was important when there is legalese or when there is a particularly, defined term like file. File has a very particular definition when you're talking about law. Brief has a particular definition when you're talking about law. It was really important for us to include all of that in there. So you can search by word here. I would, if you're looking to see if there is a defined term, I would suggest going to the legal terms defined section and then using the search rather than going to this search feature. Because if you go to the broad search feature, you will get every single page that has that word on it rather than the definition. I hope that makes sense to everybody. Now we looked at the about page, that's history about the website, other, future plans about the website will go there, as well as those promotional materials. And then we also do have that search within the website. This is kind of a work in progress. So be gentle with us. We are also going to be launching probably sometime later in the winter. I think it's really important for us, we can be in a space of experts, and as much as we try to be in the beginner's mind and understand what the people don't understand that are coming to us, we can't necessarily always get there. So I want to create focus groups of people who are actively and directly using it and hearing questions and hearing the concerns or what their needs are, so that we can try to address that. I think oftentimes we just make a lot of assumptions because we don't have time. I think a huge value add is really understanding what people need. So there will probably be calls put out for people who want to volunteer. I love my public librarian colleagues. And if people are passionate about this, I would love to get other input on what you're seeing and experiencing in places around the state. So then I promised that we would look through this part, the People's Law Library explainer video. This is the one that's under 3.5 minutes. Then there's a link again to that same YouTube channel. Research topics, these are the same links that are appear under here, under the research topics tab in the navigation bar. And then of course we have the Ask a Librarian. How can we help? That links to the form that people can fill out. Sorry, it's just taking a second to load. That Mandy was discussing during the day, immediately received by them, answer within 24 hours. At night, there'll be a little bit of lag time, of course. As I said, we've got the little translate button and the quick escape for those who need it. And then there's information just generally about the state library and then where some of this funding comes from. So hopefully that was a good kind of overarching tour. I don't know if we had any other questions in the chat.
One person is asking why 2 pages of terms?
Why 2 pages of terms?
Why not have words clickable for definitions?
So we have the 1 page of terms. So this is the glossary, and then we have research topics. Now these are the substantive topics.
Mm-hmm.
And then within each of these kind of parts and pages, as I showed in the changing adult's name, you don't have to go anywhere else. They're all right. They're all clickable right there.
So the glossary is just a central list of all those terms.
Central list of all of those terms, because sometimes people just they want to see if a term is defined, right? So we needed to do that. And then we also needed to link and embed them so that anywhere those terms appear on the website, the definition will immediately pop up.
Great. I have not noticed other questions.
There was a question that I think somebody else answered, but it had to do with the quick escape button.
Yes.
That is for like if let's say a woman is in a domestic violence situation and wants to look at a divorce page. How do you get divorced in Iowa? And her husband walks up behind her. She can click on the quick escape page and just be on the Google, homepage, so that he doesn't see that she was looking at how to get divorced. It can be used in situations where you need to quickly get off of that page because you could be in a sensitive situation, that type of thing.
It is important to know if people do have questions about the quick escape, that it does not clear your history. I know that can sometimes be an issue, but if there is a question about it, that is an important reminder.
Well, very good. Folks, I want to say a big thank you to Mandy and to Carissa for this webinar today, of course, and also to each of them and many others behind the scenes that have worked to make this resource possible. I'm seeing a lot of appreciative comments in the chat, and I do think that this is going to be a wonderful resource for librarians and their public. And now I'm going to ignore the chat because it's scrolling too fast for me to read, but folks will take the attendance list from today and plug that into Iowa Learns. You'll get an automated reminder when your continuing ed credit is ready for you. But please join me in thanking Mandy and Carissa, and let us know what feedback you have on the Law Library website. So thanks to both of you.
Thank you. Thanks, Samantha. Thanks, Mandy. Thanks all of you for attending. And I really do hope that this is an ongoing dialogue, because we want to help you help your patrons. And we want to empower people with foundational information. If they go in looking for assistance when they have a little bit of foundational knowledge, it deeply helps their level of anxiety and stress, as well as helping them get the representation that they need more quickly, and hopefully with less expense, because they're not asking the most basic questions of the lawyers, and they can focus on the representation or the things they have to file or the actions they have to take to support those people. So thank you again so much.
Thank you, guys. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.